Electricast. This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
When you need to build up your team to handle the growing chaos at work, use Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It gives your job post the boost it needs to be seen and helps reach people with the right skills, certifications, and more. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. That's Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need a hiring hero? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today I'm speaking with Angela Conway. Angela is an attorney, social entrepreneur, and globally recognized leader who has dedicated her career to transforming legal systems and creating opportunity for women in law across more than 30 countries. As a founder of the Lady Justice Initiative, she is leading systems change at the intersection of AI and law. And before that, she turned a single idea at the American Bar Association into a 19-country operation across the Middle East and North Africa. Angela, I am so looking forward to this conversation and chatting with you today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am grateful for the opportunity, Leslie, and excited to be here. And thank you so much for what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, well, we talked on our coffee chat, and I said I wanted to open up the space to more women to be able to listen to the podcast and feel like they have someone that they can relate to, someone in that corporate professional environment. Because a lot of the women I first started out the podcast was really more around the entrepreneurial space, and I know that that is a space that you are also in. But I felt like I really wanted women in corporate or in a professional environment to feel like, okay, there are other women that are in an environment outside of the entrepreneurial, or maybe they're straddling both worlds, but at least I feel like, okay, I can relate to that person. They can relate to me. So that is why I opened up July, and I'm going to be doing more of that as the coming seasons. But, I was thinking about seasons 5 already and how I'm going to open that up to more voices. So before we talk about the work you're doing today, I really want to go back to the beginning, because your path to founding the Lady Justice Initiatives is one that spans continents, legal systems, and decades of pioneering work. So can you take us through that journey and share what you discovered along the way that ultimately led you to create something so focused on catalyzing opportunity specifically for women in law?
So I've had what I refer to as a magic carpet ride of a legal career. I took a very different path than most lawyers, and it was an unplanned path in a undeveloped field. So it has truly been a journey, and there are so many rewards that I've received from following that unplanned path. And I hope today to inspire and encourage other women to take a chance and to pursue something that they find meaningful and enables them to work with passion and then use all their legal skills to do some good in the world. My career's kind of had 3 different eras, all toward the objective of supporting systems change and transformation in the legal sector. So the first era was really after the fall of the Berlin Wall, helping countries in Central Europe undertake their political transitions, their government institution building, their legal system building, as new nations were born and their people mapped a path forward under the new democracies that existed at that time. And the second era was a continuation of that work supporting governments and people in the legal sector in realizing new possibilities, bringing them to life in the aftermath of 9/11. So that's the work that took me to the Middle East and North Africa, where I worked on an array of initiatives with governments and law schools and other parts of the legal community, bars, civil society groups who wanted to change the way they were doing things, to give more people opportunity, to enhance economic opportunity in their countries, to build growth, to advance the rule of law. And then the third era is the era we're in now, which is the AI revolution. So revolutions in Eastern Europe, revolutions in the Middle East, and now the era where we're in, where I really see AI as having a revolutionary effect on the legal sector in ways that are quite similar, actually, to the ones I've experienced in the past. And, my work over the years has focused holistically on the sector. So everything from, supporting government bodies, cabinet officials who wanted to strengthen the way a judicial system worked, improve the way judges were trained, improve how systems serve their people, and the same type of work in law schools and other institutions. But the through line of that work was always women in law, supporting women in the profession, the judges, the lawyers, the court clerks, and others, and then working on issues related to women's experience with law. So helping women access to justice, supporting advancement of women's legal rights during constitutional and other processes. So diverse work, but always with that really strong through line of women in the profession. And because of where I did the work and the type of work, I had the great privilege and opportunity to work with the global leaders in the profession, the women who were leading as bar presidents and judges and Supreme Court justices, and women who were leading movements in their countries and doing incredible things like enabling women to run for political office or gain access to roles that previously were closed to them, to become judges for the first time. And so, really, from that experience, working with those women, seeing what they were able to do, seeing individual women who didn't have high level positions, women who maybe were a regular judge in a regular court in a mid-sized town somewhere, but became concerned about an issue and took the initiative to create something that changed the trajectory on that issue. Early on, there was a female judge in Slovakia who was upset that there was a perception the courts were corrupt, and she took action and changed the entire system of the way courts were managed. And there were so many more women like her who followed their passion and used their legal experience to make a really big change. And that showed me what's possible when you have passion, you have support, that enabling people to find that and giving them the tools to make the most of that is something that is really open to all of us. And increasingly, my work involved use of technology in the legal sector, using technology to address complex problems. Before, legal tech was really a field, finding ways to solve problems around accessing legal information or accessing ways of monitoring legal services. And I could see that technology was disrupting the legal sector and creating an opening for change, creating an opening to think about how we could do things differently, maybe in a better way, in a way that better solves the needs of people. And I wanted to explore that. And so I set out to, with a very specific goal of trying to develop ways to support entrepreneurs and nonprofit leaders who wanted to innovate legal solutions, in particular solutions that helped expand access to justice. And in the early days of that work, I was at a lot of events in tech and related to financing those endeavors. And I started looking around the rooms, Leslie, and I noticed there weren't very many women. So I started counting the number of women in these spaces, and really became sort of a feeling I had when I was working in very close spaces around the world where women didn't have access to certain roles and were restricted in what they could do professionally. That feeling came upon me sitting, in an American conference room And I decided to look into the situation, the environment, the women who are working in the legal tech space, working with innovation in their government bodies. Like, how did they get into the space? And what was their experience in entering the space? And so I undertook research interviewing 105 women around the world, 31 countries, regular lawyers who maybe saw a problem and tried to fix it in their institution and couldn't get traction or support. And so they went out and left their law firm and founded a company, and many, many other versions of that story. And the bottom line was many of them had achieved great success, but nearly all of them had encountered just immense barriers and challenge after challenge. And many had undertaken that work alone. They hadn't really had support. The pathways weren't clear. There weren't mentors. Getting finance for their ventures was very difficult, yet they were so tremendously successful, so passionate, so committed, very just exceptionally talented women. And that really moved me to see that they had maybe been lawyers or business leaders in the sector, and they had taken the initiative to do the really hard thing. And then it was really hard as
Mhm.
they were doing it. And then the success that they found. And I responded to the findings from that study and my feelings from that experience, and took a decision to found the Lady Justice Initiative, which is all about supporting women in building the future of law, whether they're doing it in a public sector institution, leading a court or government body, or whether
Mhm.
they decided to be an entrepreneur, or whether they're in their law firm and trying to figure out AI governance and transformation and leading in that way. So
Ah,
that's the journey.
yeah, I love that. Well, I'm glad that you gave us such a broad picture, and I love that. One of the things I think that stands out for me is that it was still women focused. Like, yes, we obviously know that half the population is male, but I think what happens with women, sometimes we take a back seat. I don't know if it's because we somehow feel we're supposed to step back and allow, and men just have this, I don't know, there's energy about them. They just step forward. And women, I think, are now starting, because we are supporting each other. We're now starting to step forward and do these things. And I love the fact that, being in the legal world, that you are doing things that are beyond just, within, like, in a maybe just in a law firm environment. Because I know there are a lot of wonderful women I've spoken to who have law firms that they've created, and they're helping other women create law firms that are really designed to support them. And I think that's fantastic. But I love the fact that you are now just going outside, and it's a global experience, because, we live in a global environment that we all have access to each other. So I love that you do this. One of the things that I really wanted to go back to was that you took an idea at the ABA, the American Bar Association, and you built it into a 19-country initiative across the Middle East and North Africa. You kind of started touching on that. You raised over $150 million in program funding, and you led more than 140 groundbreaking initiatives. I know that you were naming some of those. What does it actually take? Because I know, like, this is a lot, like what you've done, and there's that incredible drive, right? What does it take internally and externally to build something of that scale from scratch? And what do you want women leaders to understand about what that kind of bold, visionary building really requires of you?
So I don't have a well-developed secret strategy to share, but what I will say, I think this is something that I really want to, highlight now, because I think we're all in a situation where the future of the sector is uncertain. We're navigating something brand new. No one has a strategy necessarily. And so I think it's really important for women in law to share with each other any experiences they might have to be effective in the period we're currently in. So when you're navigating something novel, like I was, kind of at scale, and you have no playbook, I say to use North Star navigation. And what that means is you need to understand what matters to you, and center your work on your values and your principles, and you set some goals, and that's how you steer. And so you may have to tack in different directions as you move along, but you have that North Star that guides you. When I first began work in the rule of law field, it was a brand new field at the time. It hadn't really matured. A little bit of work had been done, but it hadn't really matured. And there weren't playbooks. There weren't, like, all the evidence there is now about how to perform the work. And I remember early on, maybe the first week or two, one of the leaders showed up in my office with a piece of nice vellum paper and that had 10 guiding principles on it. And it was the principles for the organization, how we would be, how we would work. And so I tacked it to my wall. And that was the playbook. And in some ways, that's still the playbook. Lady Justice Initiative has similar, we're in a similar time of like field building, and we have some principles too. But that can take you a surprisingly long way when you work according to that mission. You have, identified what matters to you, what your values are. You center on impact that can carry you across a lot. And that's what carried me in building all the different things that me and my teams, I've had big teams helping me all along the way in reaching some of those outcomes that you described at the top of the question.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love the fact that again, there is no playbook, right? We actually all lived individual lives, which is beautiful, which means we can all come at it with a different perspective, might be even something new and innovative that we bring into the world. If we all thought alike, I think it would be pretty boring. And I think it's really nice that we actually all can still come at the same maybe challenge or problem and each have our own take on it, and if we can do it collectively, and that's why I think women, as we are now coming into this, I think this season of women where we are really supporting each other. One of the reasons why I really chose to have this podcast was specifically for that, for women to support each other, women's voices for women. And although I do get pitched a lot by men to be on the show, I've just really wanted to stay true to the idea of why I started the podcast was because I really wanted women to support each other. And I started seeing that happening. And it really resonated with me to have something like this so that I could bring women like yourself on and really be able to support each other where how you're doing, like especially because you are on such a global scale, which is leading me to my next question, because you are doing something, you're working on something that I think is one of the most important and complex intersections of our time right now. I still have my foot in the legal industry a little bit because I do support a team of lawyers and paralegals in California a few hours a day, Monday through Friday. One of the things that they started talking about was AI and the legal industry. And so you're doing it with a specific focus on what it means for women and for legal systems around the world. So I want to talk about some of the other things. One of the things I know about you, because you do really care about not just Western values, but you also are really like, I think, globally minded, where you really truly want things for everyone to have like access to, like as you were said, access to legal systems that really are fair. So what do you see as the greatest opportunity that AI actually presents for advancing, let's say, gender equality and access to justice? And what are risks that we can't afford to ignore if we don't get this right?
Yes, absolutely. So it's a historic opportunity. So at the moment we're currently in is one where, for the first time in over a century, we have a chance to think about what we want our legal systems to look like, what we want the institutions that help those systems operate to, how we want them to be configured, the way that we want to solve legal problems and how we can solve them now that we have all kinds of new technology and potential to do it maybe more effectively at a broader scale, and what we want our work in the sector to look like too. So it's the opportunity is historic because the technology is requiring us to have a conversation about what we want, how we're going to do things differently. And that's an opportunity for everyone in the sector and people everywhere in thinking about how they want to be able to better access their legal rights and interface with the law. I think it's critical that we be intentional about that opportunity and that we think transformationally. Yes, of course, the technology will help us be more efficient, maybe expand access to services that may have been limited before. But it's also a historic opportunity really to reimagine, to shift paradigms, to think in a really expansive way about what we need in the age of AI, what we need in 2026 in our societies. And I really want to encourage people to fly higher and to have that be part of their thinking when they're considering the moment and how their institutions, how their communities will respond, adapt, and maximize the great potential that we have. before us. And then having worked on helping people who were trying to change legal systems and institutions in the past, it's a lot easier to build something new than it is to change something that's existed. And so that's another facet of the opportunity at hand, is that we don't necessarily have to engage in some of the things that would be needed if we were amending what exists, if we can build fresh, and if we can ensure that the building of the new things is open, that it's democratized, that people who want to devote themselves to that building have that opportunity. It's not closed in spaces where people can't come in the door. So that's the other, I guess the third opportunity is that really the one to build in an inclusive way and to open that opportunity to more people. And we'll get better solutions if we bring in more types of people who have the problems, have experienced the problems, are typically the best ones to solve them. And so, really, a unique moment where we can enable that because of the technology and because of the process we're going through right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it struck me when I first heard the managing partner at the firm that I support talking about embracing AI, because I know at one point there was this disconnect or this pushback on AI. But now, like you're saying, legal communities are now embracing the possibilities of what AI can do. Now, AI is not perfect, and we all obviously understand that, but it can help with a lot of things, provided it's set up in a way that is, set in a way that it understands what the actual, I guess, the legal community needs. And I think that's probably what we're working on, because AI can be one thing for someone as like an entrepreneur or somebody who uses it for journaling and those other types of things like personal use. But then the business side of it, I haven't seen what that looks like yet, but I'm curious to see how that plays out over the next several years, because obviously AI is not going anywhere. It's only getting better and better, and it's getting more advanced. And I think a lot of people are starting to really embrace the idea of AI in their businesses, especially because in the legal business, it can be really like it's really important that the information is correct, because if people are using it to gather research, to I don't know if they're creating documentation from the use of AI. As I said, I don't know where that lands yet, but I do know that that is going to be very important, that that is done in a way that it's done right, I guess, is the word I guess I'm looking for, because that is going to affect I mean, it's very important. Obviously, the law has to be the law, and it has to pan out exactly and not be made up, or the information has to be correct. So I know that's your field and something that you are truly pioneering, and I really love that you do that. I do want to shift it a little bit, because I know one of the things that you mentioned at the beginning. I mean, you have such an incredible background. Like, I am blown away by it. But you've served as a trusted cabinet legal advisor to dozens of ministers of justice, chief justices, attorneys general across the world. And I think there is something very powerful about a woman who hasn't just earned a seat at those tables, but you have shaped conversations that happen there. Like, I truly believe that obviously you have. What has leading and advising at that level taught you about what it truly takes for a woman to show up with authority and influence in those spaces that sometimes they weren't always designed for them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, again, no playbook for that necessarily. What I can share is that in working, I work largely global, and it's just really important to show up, to listen, to learn, to understand what your counterparts' needs are, what the challenges they're facing are, and be really aligned with ways in which you can offer value and expertise to support them in reaching their goals. And I found that if you position yourself in that way, that is something that's valued. And if you can show that you are attuned to that, and also, your commitment to supporting and contributing, I found that is really powerful in terms of building bonds and building trust and building a willingness sometimes to do things that are sensitive, politically sensitive, or maybe tough. But you show up by listening and learning, and that can carry you into a lot of really difficult places and maybe achieve some things that might not have seemed possible when you walked into that room.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. So one of the things that you've done is you have spent your career, I think we talked a little bit about this already, about the advancement of gender equality within legal systems and institutions around the world. I think many people assume that because more women are actually entering the legal profession, that the work's done, right? They think the work is largely done because, well, there's more women entering the space. And yes, from what I understand from people who've told me this, that there are seems to be more women that are entering the legal field than there are men. I haven't really looked at the numbers, but what do you want people to understand about what still needs to change and why having more women in law isn't the same as having systems that actually work for women?
Yes, that's, a really important issue to chat about. So the point you made about more women in the sector is absolutely true. I think the latest statistics I saw were that I think about maybe more than 50 of current law students are female. Women are entering practice here in the US at about 50%, an equal level with men, maybe a few more women than men entering the profession. In other countries, the statistics might even be higher in some places where the percentage of women in law school exceeds by an additional 10% men. And so you have robust numbers going in, but then over the course of the years, early, mid, or late, early and mid career professionals are often leaving the profession because of maybe the challenges they face in the workplaces that we have today and the working environments we have today, leaving law entirely to do something else. And that's a retention issue for their employers, but it's also a broader issue for all of us that's the context that these professionals face. And then the statistics also show that even though the numbers are fairly equal at the beginning and even in the early years, the numbers dwindle when you start looking at the leadership of institutions. And I don't have the most recent off the top of my head. I think it's around like 20% of equity partners are female, and then even a smaller number at the top. And you see this phenomenon across institutional types, maybe more women in public institutions in leadership roles, but there's a leadership gap that still exists. So it's great that we have more individuals in the field. We want to keep them in the field, even if they're changing roles or, switching to be an entrepreneur. And we want to make the professional experience more rewarding, more possible for more people. And so that's why, again, it's really important that we take advantage of the opportunity we have before us right now to think about systems change and institution building and how we can work in new ways that provide more opportunity for people to succeed, realize their full potential, work in ways that their broader needs in life might require. And as we undergo this transformation and think about things that can be done maybe by technology and how we can, reconsider how we deliver legal services or perform legal work or other tasks in the sector, to take this time to consider all these issues together, right, and have it be a really intentional discussion that will hopefully lead to an outcome that's more favorable for women in law.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I do have a final question for you. And my final question for you really is just that I love how you've spent your career doing work that most people wouldn't even know where to begin because you've done a lot. Like you really have, but you've gone out and you're making impact around the world. You're building institutions, you're advising governments, you're advancing justice, you're championing women across more than 30 countries. I mean, globally, you are a champion of women. And I really love that. That's one of the things that drew me to when we started talking, when I first found you, I think I was on LinkedIn when we first had our coffee chat. And I just realized that I really truly felt that there was just something about your journey that would be just such an impact for the listeners to be able to hear your words and how you did the things that you do. So that's my question for you. For the women who are listening today, whether they're in law, whether they're in leadership roles, maybe they're just simply trying to figure out how to make a meaningful impact on the world. From your perspective, what would you at least like to impart some wisdom for them, something that maybe you learned that maybe you didn't know until after the fact, that you could maybe give them something to at least think about so that they can have that at least a little bit more of an ease into doing something different, maybe wanting to make impact in the world, and they are not really sure what doors to open, maybe what doors to close. What would you like to leave them with that could give them that, at least that little boost, something you learned that you'd love to be able to impart for them today?
So, I guess, first of all, you're more capable than you might think, and your skills in law have really broad applicability. And so, I would say, I think women should think expansively about what they're capable of doing. Particularly now, we're at a time when there's opportunity. We're all learning, we're all doing something new. And so, you have capabilities that you can apply in a new kind of way, and the field is open to that. I really want to encourage people to look for the possibility, to think about what motivates them, what energizes them, what they have passion for, and to pursue that. I think that for me has been really a gift. I've been from the beginning able to work toward a mission, to focus on things I'm passionate about. And that's enabled me to maybe go places I didn't have any experience with. I didn't have a playbook, but was able to draw upon my legal training and other skills to get there. So I just encourage everyone to capture the opportunity that we have right now and to use your domain knowledge to maybe experiment, do something on the side, do some reading, learn about it, see what appeals to you, because I think it's really a unique moment and that lots of possibility is available to all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that there is so much possibility, and it's such a beautiful gift to be able to look and see, like, what are my skill sets? What am I passionate about? What can I actually give back? Because oftentimes I've heard women say, well, who would care about like what I can do? But there is going to be somebody out there who's going to say, yeah, I do care about what you know. And I would love to hear what you know. And that I think is just enough to be able to say, okay, I can start making impact, even if it's just one voice. One voice turns into two, and then it doubles and it triples and goes from there. And so yeah, I really loved our conversation today, Angela. I truly have. I love the work that you're doing for women, for our legal systems, for justice around the world. It's the kind of work that I believe it reminds me why conversations like this matter for me to have on the show. You've spent your career building things that didn't exist before you decided that they should. And the fact that you've done that across more than 30 countries in some of the most complex environments in the world, and you've kept women at the center of it all, that's extraordinary, and so are you. So I want to say thank you so much for spending time with me today and for sharing your story, your mission, your heart. It's been such a pleasure having you today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And to our listeners, if you'd like to connect with Angela directly and learn more about the Lady Justice Initiative and her work at the intersection of AI and law, you can find her contact information in the show notes. Remember, the life you're meant to live isn't waiting for you to be ready. It's waiting for you to be willing. Willing to show up, willing to care, and willing to use your voice for something that matters. Because in the end, that's what extraordinary looks like in real life. Not perfect, not polished, just willing. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Electricast.